Hello, this is the biggest bowl that I own and I'm gonna be using it to make some daily bread. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I bake bread all the time, but this recipe is kind of special because it's very easy. You make a big batch of dough and then you keep that dough in the fridge for up to 4 days, and then you just pull off a little bit every day to bake a daily loaf. So it grows quite a bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in this really big bowl. It's got a lid, but you don't need one. You can use saran wrap if you have to. You really only need flour, yeast, and salt. This is the yeast I'm using, and just some regular kosher salt. It starts with 1.5 cups of water. I use warm bath. The recipe for this down below. Okay, you want warm water, warm to the touch. You don't want it to burn you. You want it to burn your yeast. I keep my yeast in the freezer, so a little bit warmer than normal is probably fine. Need 1.5 cups. Approximately 1.5 cups of water. I think I do 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. So here's a tablespoon. I'm gonna do a tablespoon of yeast and 1/2. A little bit more for good measure. Tablespoon and 1/2 of salt. Mix that up with a little fork. Yeast going. You don't warm water because it'll rise faster. And you want 3.5 cups of flour. This is a 1/2 cup measuring, so I'm gonna do 7 scoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now this is what it looks like. Not much going on there. And then I'm gonna use a fork or a spoon to mix it the best I can until it starts to get too sticky and you can't really do much. Then I will use a wet hand. Wish you could see what I'm doing. It's looking like this. I can't really mix it more, okay? So I'm gonna take a wet hand. Just one wet hand's fine. And I'm gonna clean off my fork. You can see because my hand's wet, it's not sticking to me a lot. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pinch it and knead it like this, until it's fully incorporated. It's gonna get all over your hands, and you know what? That's okay. I'm just trying to make sure that there's no dry patches in my dough. It's gonna be super shaggy and super wet, and you're gonna think, this is too wet, is what you're gonna think. That's okay. Here comes my cat. Get out of here. Go. Now, to get this off your hands, what I do is I take my other hand, get it wet, and then I'm gonna use that to remove the dough. So now I have a wet hand and a dirty hand. I'm gonna take my very wet hand and I'm just gonna remove the dough. This is what my dough looks like. Very shaggy. It looks like it's not really coming together. That's fine. Leave it. Don't knead it. Just make sure there's no no dry patches of flour in your dough, and you'll be good. This is a no knead recipe. Very simple. This is what it looks like again. Just leave it for 2 hours and let it rise until it doubles in size. It's gonna be really bubbly because it's warm and there's a lot of yeast in there. So I'll see you in 2 hours. Forgot to mention, I do cover it. You can use saran wrap, you can use whatever. You just don't want the top to dry out. It's been actually only 1.5 hours and this is what it's looking like. Which I would say that that's ready to move on. So 1.5 hours, 2 hours is what we're looking for here. It's still pretty shaggy, so I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do. Let me see if I can get a better camera angle so you can see what I'm doing. Here it is. Sorry for the poor lighting. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to get my hands wet again. I always work with wet hands. And I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a stretch and fold that you would see when you do sourdough, just to kind of work the dough into a ball. I'm not gonna be kneading it by any means, but I'll just punch. This is kind of like punching the dough down. I'm just releasing it from the sides right now. Okay, what I'm gonna do is, it's okay if you knock the air out because it's gonna continue rising. And then I'm just gonna scoop my hand underneath like this, pick up the dough, and then fold it back over on itself like that. And then I'm gonna do the same thing again. This is kind of very similar to what you would do in a stretch and fold. If your hands start getting sticky, just go get them wet again. Freshly wet hand, grabbing the dough, and I'm kind of doing this until it forms a ball. You can see already how much smoother it's looking. It's formed a ball. Okay, you can see I have a nice tight ball. I'm just doing it over and over again, kind of. So again, what I'm doing is I'm scooping it up, and then I'm kind of folding it in half as I put it down. Scooping it up and folding it back on itself like this, okay? And now I have a nice tight ball. You go ahead and break off the piece that I want. I'm gonna add a little foil or a little flour to my countertop so I can, uh-oh, got lumpy flour. All right, with a little flour on the counter and some wet hands, I'm just gonna break off small baseball sized dough ball like this. Since this is a wet dough, I'm gonna add a little flour to it like this. Okay, just to add to the top so we can form some gluten across the top. I'm just gonna kind of make a tight ball like so. Okay, and I'm not explaining what I'm doing, but it's hard to explain how to handle dough if you've never handled it before. So now I have kind of this tight little ball, okay, and I'm just gonna stick it on my foil here. And you could use parchment. I actually prefer parchment, but you're gonna wanna let it do its second rise on the piece of paper or foil that you're gonna use to bake it on, because it's gonna be hard to transfer once it's risen. So I'm gonna let this rise for another 30 to 40 minutes while my oven preheats. And then this guy, with a wet hand, I'm just gonna form it into a ball. It's gonna continue to rise in the fridge, and save this for another day. Okay, sorry for the background noise. My family has arrived. Here it is, the dough. I've let it proof for an hour just because I had to run to the grocery store, so it's looking okay. If you have a Dutch oven, you can do 15 minutes with the lid on, 15 minutes with the lid off. If you're gonna do it just on a baking sheet like this, I would say check on it after 20 minutes, and if it's golden brown, it's done. It's gonna cook a lot faster with not in the Dutch oven, so just keep an eye on it. It's not preheated. You could preheat it if you wanted to, but I always burn myself when I do that. You don't need to score it. You can if you want to be fancy, but that's not my forte. Go ahead and bake it for 15 minutes covered, 15 minutes uncovered, or 20 plus or minus 10 minutes if you're not going to use a Dutch oven. Sorry for the background noise. Here it is. All done. This is just a small loaf for 1 day's worth of bread. Like I said, you can store it in the fridge and you can bake off a little loaf for your family every day. Easy bread dough. Enjoy.